the operating company, they said that's a high-risk activity. Ask us for authority, and guess what? You would have never gotten the authority. So that came up as an issue. So at the end of the day, it's about getting these regulations right.
US tech is influencing global markets.
Technology is driving business across Europe.
Companies in Asia are betting on tech.
Get your fixed income fix. Watch Bloomberg Real Yield around the world right here on Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
We are moments away from another big rally on Wall Street. This is Bloomberg Open Interest. I'm Matt Miller. You're looking at a 2.5% gain in futures after a 2.5% gain in the cash trade yesterday. So we could be building on that rally as it looks like the Trump administration is backing off a little bit of the aggressiveness of its trade war. NASDAQ futures up even more than 3%. So tech stocks getting a bigger gain. Of course, they got hit harder. Shanali always shows us how the Mag 7 have been doing year to date, and they're still all down year to date. Opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. A couple ETF operators here. The New York Stock Exchange, you've got Elm Victor Agani, co-founder of Long-Term Capital Management, there with his ETF that's just started trading, I guess, in February. And then you've got Rex ringing the opening bell. BMAX is one of the ETFs that we're focused in on, or that Rex is focused in on today at the NASDAQ. BMAX is, I think, a convertible bonds ETF that is all about Bitcoin. And Katie, Bitcoin has been very interesting because it continues to rise even as the market is in turmoil. You know, Matt, I was going to say you sound like someone who used to anchor an ETF show, really dusting off your knowledge there. And a crypto show, that's true. A long, illustrious resume for Matt Miller. But let's talk about what's going on with Tesla, because it's still flying this morning after Elon Musk's comment he's going to pull back from Doge and refocus on the struggling car maker. Shares currently up about 6% just on that news, Shanali, even though the first quarter was pretty dismal.
Not struggling today, though, and not struggling over here either. Boeing's revenue met analyst estimates as it slowly ramps up production of 737 jets. The company also burned less cash than expected. Shares up now almost 7%, Matt.
Yes, my day, guys, my day.
Another one that's gaining today. On its
Gold
own
is dropping, guys. I'm getting closer to that daily lows.
Plans to cut 20% of its jobs. The
GDX been down major pre-market. Bell's just gone as well. So let's see. I reckon if gold does give us, one more pullback, then we can go in for a much heavier short.
Intel reports earnings tomorrow, so we'll see if it can continue with these kind of gains.
I'm also looking at short in euro dollar
Technologies. Ed Ludlow, he joins us out in San Francisco. So Ed, they just cut.
Still need to see what the dollar wants to do, though. That's the only other thing I'd say.
And change are going to go now under the new
we do have some high impact news coming very, very soon.
I still think there's a sense
so
that
let's wait for that.
Bloated, right? And what our reporting and the source says is that this effort, this latest one, the 20%, is focused on middle management. So it's a bloat issue, but also a cultural
got manufacturing
issue.
PMI and services PMI in 12 minutes.
He was ultra focused on Intel becoming a contract manufacturer for third parties, and the product side of things wasn't really ever recovered. It doesn't really seem that Intel's at the cutting edge and competitive on key markets like AI accelerators. So that's the motivation here. Yeah, kind of cut overall headcount beyond the 15,000 they did last year, another 20%, but kind of get a lean and mean vibe going in Intel where they focus on the technology as well.
Well, yeah, just for context, you think about Intel, apparently it had just under 110,000 employees at the end of 2024, so still some bloat there. But tell us more about what we should be expecting to hear when they actually take the earnings stage tomorrow. It seems like Wall Street says that the worst of the revenue declines
gold looks pretty good to keep coming down.
But it's not like they're going to return to maybe some past decades growth levels.
Yeah, I mean, the story on Intel is that they kind of missed the boat on GPUs, right, or AI accelerators for data centers, and they were heavily that time in August when they did the last round of layoffs leveraged towards CPUs. You know, they were offering loads of something that people didn't want as much.
Let's see if we can get those
It'll
shorts.
be interesting to see if
we can get it.
rebalanced. And then on paper, like Intel is the national champion for the United States, right? On paper. It's the biggest beneficiary on paper of the CHIPS Act, which is so uncertain. So it'll be interesting to hear from them how they feel about accessing funds from the CHIPS Act and whether that they can basically put their hand up and say to the administration, help us. We want to do what you're talking about, onshore more supply chain here in the United States. And I think that they will kind of lean into that a little bit.
Ed, I have been waiting all morning for your take on this show on Tesla. Tell us what you got.
Yeah, you know, markets and investors don't seem so focused on sales and profit, right? And I think that we got exactly what the market hoped for, which is Elon Musk just to say the simple thing, pulling back from Doge starting next month, May, and re-emphasizing a commitment to Tesla. A lot of it doesn't add up. I mean, there is a 130-day limit anyway on a special government employee, even if they're not paid. So he would have had to have stopped working with Doge in some capacity by the end of May anyway, based on that 130 days. There are some contradictions in the earnings deck, what Elon Musk said and what the CFO said. If you take your magnifying glass, you can find them. Elon Musk said basically outside of macro issues, there's no impact to demand. The CFO contradicted that and said quite clearly there was the vandalism and brand issue, which hurt demand, changing political landscape, quote from the deck, impacting demand going forward. But on the biggest exposure in the whole tariffs thing, it's definitely China and that energy storage business, where we need to learn a lot more about the proportion of cells that are coming out of the Shanghai facility that go into energy storage products here in America.
Plus, they're going to start producing the cheaper car this half. They're going to do full self-driving, not just Europe and Asia, but in America this year. So there's some really good up-arrow stories there as well. Ed Ludlow, look forward to your program at 11 a.m. Bloomberg Technology. Let's broaden out to today's market rally. We're joined by Corient partner and wealth advisor Amy Kong here in the studio. Thanks so much for joining us on set, Amy.
Thanks.
What do you think about yesterday? We got a flurry of headlines out of Scott Bessent at a JP Morgan meeting, and then Donald Trump. He's going to play nice. He's going to essentially back down a bit on this trade war with China. Does that make you more bullish this market as well?
Not quite there yet, but I certainly welcome some of these relief rallies. And essentially, just pulling back a little bit, the market is and has been trading on headlines, and it probably will continue to do so over the foreseeable future, just trying to gain some clarity on what to make of the tariff war situation. The good news is we are entering into an earnings season right now, and the hope is that the market focus, if you would shift a little bit more towards fundamentals. But as we saw with Tesla, I think the markets are still very keen on trying to find those macro clues and trying to look for clarity. We do think fundamentals will kick in. We are starting to see estimates come down a little bit, and that's important. But I do think the market is still very market driven.
Well, that's where I wanted to go, that if we do return to that focus on fundamentals as we get into the heart of earnings season, as you mentioned, earnings estimates have been coming down. The ratio of downgrades relative to upgrades, it's been negative for weeks here. So maybe we focus on fundamentals, but it seems like we're going to get some bad news in the weeks ahead.
It's possible that the earnings estimates will continue to come down, Katie, and we started to see that already. I believe that the market was expecting maybe around 14–15% year-over-year growth, but that's likely to simmer down. It's already down to about 10 to 11%, and we're only 20% in terms of S&P 500 earnings. Don't forget the Mag 7 companies have not yet reported, and that's
Money day gift. How you doing, bro?
This week into the coming weeks as well, and that
looks like EU's finally moving as well.
Earnings estimates coming down a little bit more.
You know, Amy, when I looked at the
Which is
sectors
good.
this morning after the open, you are looking at consumer discretionary really helping lead this rebound. And one thing I think is interesting is if you click through, you would expect it to be so much of Tesla in that. But you see, like Williams-Sonoma and other stocks kind of helping lead the way here too. I think that's fascinating because it shows you people have been really, really, really negative on the U.S. consumer. You even saw some of that negativity flow from the staples into the discretionary sector
Might
too,
not get that pullback.
or the other way around rather.
It's a heavy drop.
No, not
Me and
cheap.
Shanali both like to cook.
Really heavy drop.
But you know, how much do you
Okay,
have
tell you
conviction in
what,
those consumer
if
trades
the
at this
daily
point in
lows
time,
can
given
hold,
so
we
much
do have a
concern
few
around
more
these
minutes till this news comes out.
Absolutely. I think,
And I'm kind of anticipating if this news will give us a bit of volatility.
Consumers are front loading,
Dollar's finally moving.
not waiting to purchase and doing that now in case the price hikes steepen a little bit more towards the back end of this year. What's interesting is that, you know, the headlines out there are scary. And, you know, what we are seeing is that that kind of scariness is not yet translating just yet into the data points. Retail sales, to your comments just before, you know, have not been suggesting any kind of recessionary signal just yet. And so there could be, you know, the fact that household balance sheets are still healthy and consumers are still spending, or some of it's front loading, as I just mentioned.
So do you think the Fed is going to be able to cut? Do you think the Fed should cut now? We don't see inflation coming back in the hard data, as you point out. And,
yeah, okay, so looks like gold's taking out that low.
Down a bit, so why not cut?
You know, as long as the Fed's independence is still in the picture, you know, for as long as they can hold on to that, I think the Fed is still looking for a trend line in terms of the data flow. And the CPI numbers have not been getting worse, but they also have not been moving closer and closer to that 2% target. So as long as they can hold out,
I reckon, you know, when we look at the news release when it does come out, if we can get a little bit of a pullback
May 7th to the next meeting.
That's correct.
on the dollar, we can keep shorting the EU. Well, keep shorting the EU, not the EU.
Likely coming down to between
But it is moving. I like the fact that we've taken out some lows
a lot lower than 145%
as well on the EU, which is good.
Hasn't made a final decision.
What's going on, Ritesh? You good?
So according to the Wall Street Journal,
I'm good, bro. Thank you for asking, Gift.
65% threshold, certainly giving an added pop to the S&P 500 right now, currently higher by about 2.8%.
You gotta wonder if that's just the reciprocal.
Stock markets look like they're going to keep on recovering, you know.
Tariff.
Hopefully, we'll hear more from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on this topic.
I really did want to see a slight pullback here on the gold to go short.
When it comes to trade policy, especially.
Sometimes this just happens, unfortunately.
How do you calibrate? Because okay, there's a lot
of
headlines.
But I did enter the EU shorts as well.
The world order is shifting a little bit.
No, absolutely. And
so let's see how that does.
The headlines, especially towards the earlier part of this month, have been just very wild, as we all know it.
I like some of these 5-minute candles in EU. Looks really good.
But certainly we are looking
I like this
for
5-minute candle here.
You know, we have this 90-day pause. We're hopeful that trade deals can come through, or at least some initial momentum
We've got 4 minutes till the news release.
What we're telling clients, what I've been telling clients, is to stay humble in this context. Understand that volatility is a feature, not a bug of the stock market. And within the stock component, I do think that having exposure to companies that have the scale and the ability to manage through tariffs, pricing power, you name it, expense control, those are, you know, in our opinion, the better way to manage through this chaos. And
he's got good potential, you know.
Headlines can turn to the negative, as we've seen, but to your point, you know, some of this momentum can actually be.
To be completely frank with you guys,
the market is staying humble as well, and
I may consider shorting gold some more if we actually get the move lower, or sorry, if we get the pullback higher. I feel like this daily candle is pretty much cemented in terms of what it wants to do. At least for the rest of today anyways. We don't have Fed speech today or anything like that. Yeah, we don't.
This is open interest.
So it's still possible that we can get something still on gold. Just have to stay open to it. So for gold, I'm still going to look at that imbalance area on gold, giving it about 200 pips, right, with a 400 pip TP. Yes, I know, you know, the SLs are huge, guys. It's just what we're playing with right now. It's just current market conditions. There's nothing we can really do about it. You know, I've gone from 100 pips. I've gone from 40 pips to 50 pips, 50 pips to 100 pips, 100 pips now to 200 pips. You know, it just is what it is. Because at the end of the day, even if I measure from the high of this range to the low, you know, we've had almost 600 pips.
India, I truly
you know, just with this small leg alone. So
Indian women has come. They're not only breaking glass ceilings.
If gold wants to give us some big moves, so be it.
You know, whether it is in sport, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in
Gift says
creative
watching
arts,
BTC is moving mad.
they are
Gift says Miss Gold
everywhere. And I have
Swords. Which
so
imbalance
much
are you looking at on the 15-minute,
positive
bro?
energy that comes
I just
back
posted
to
the setup
me when
inside
I'm
the
talking
Discord
to Indian women.
before we had
And I
this
just
mad
think
drop
that
lower.
all these little
I'm looking at the imbalance on the
girls and
15-minute for
boys, I don't
gold.
want to
See if we
discriminate,
can get a pullback
who
there.
are now in school-going age. Imagine once education, sports, we empower them. What a difference they would make not only to India but to the planet and the world. And the world needs it now than ever before.
From our studios in New York and San Francisco, our expert hosts have the data and analysis from the companies you know and the startups to watch, plus the interviews you don't want to miss.
News in a few seconds.
Watch Caroline Hyde
20
and
seconds.
Ed Ludlow on
20
Bloomberg
seconds.
Technology, the only daily business show.
I'm trying to be
dedicated
careful
tech,
with,
right
you
in the
know,
middle of
how
trading action.
the dollar is taking
Live
out these
every
highs
weekday,
here.
only on Bloomberg
Right.
Television.
So on the DXY, we've seen these equal highs being swept. Ideally, I don't want to see this low. I don't want to see price come beneath this low. That's what I'm really looking out for. We've taken out the equal highs, fine. I want to see ours continue to plow through it.
Deep in the European
How the 15-minute candles closed is not great so
Take a
far.
look at how we're faring when it comes to
We'll
Asian
just have to
markets.
work with it.
Asia is at the forefront of some of the world's biggest stories. I'm Sherrian in Tokyo.
And I'm Heidi Stradwatts here in Sydney where the trading day begins. We're here in
Alright, news shortly, news shortly.
get you set up with the numbers
Well, news should be out now, in fact.
for the day ahead.
The demand is indeed
News should be out now.
We've been waiting for this moment.
The opportunity of a century.
Join us on Bloomberg The Asia Trade. Weekdays only on Bloomberg TV. Context.
I do want to re-enter EU again, put my stop above this high here. I do want to do that. Let's take a look at the news really quickly.
Welcome back to Open Interest. Let's take a look at
No,
this
is it not
rally
out
right
yet?
now. You have the S&P 500 higher by 3%.
Yeah, it
we
is
just had
core-
that Wall Street Journal reporting
core two.
that we're looking at lowering China
Oh,
tariff
guys,
levels.
I don't see
That's,
anything on
again, according to the
investing.com.
Wall Street Journal. That's good enough for session highs on the
Don't
S&P
see
500.
anything
the
on
NASDAQ
TradingView
100
either.
also off to
Oh
the
no,
races right now,
no, this
higher
is the
by
pound.
about 3.7%.
What's going on?
And you have the small caps getting in on this action, up about 3.9%. We do have some breaking data, though, when it comes to this market, you guys.
And this is kind of a pro-Trump data set here in terms of the S&P Global.
DXY is working itself
US
higher, which is good.
PMIs.
It's really,
We have
really good.
Better than expected PMI for manufacturing, and it's even expanding. So
All right, looks like
over 50
Bloomberg will
on
talk
the
about it.
manufacturing PMI, 50.7, the level there. We were looking for a contraction at just under 50.49. The services missed, but also expanding. 51.4 was the services PMI. We were looking for 52.6. But I think it's interesting that you get that kind of trade-off, right? A little bit of expansion in manufacturing, Shanali, and you still have expansion in services, but not quite as much as we expected.
Right, but the manufacturing
Okay, so we're currently around 32 pips prof
really elevating off the heels
for
of that news, and also
the EU
an
short.
interesting contrast from
I am looking
Europe,
for an
where
aggressive
similar data was
re-entry.
disappointing. So back to that
All right,
invest
but
in America
price is
trade, the one
moving
we
very,
haven't
very
really seen
fast
today.
right now,
Good
which
enough to keep
is
that
fine.
rally going on the broader indexes. Let's focus in now on top
Dollar's
calls,
heading
though. Some of
higher.
the analyst action in focus this morning. And first up,
Okay, so next target has been reached on the DXY,
getting upgraded over at BNP,
which is nice. So next that is left is the Tokyo range high.
because it doesn't make any of its own chips. Next up, we have Solar Edge getting cut to a sell over at Morgan Stanley. The firm citing worsening demand and a negative impact from tariffs and the company's exposure to changes in the Inflation Reduction Act. And finally, Chevron getting downgraded to equal weight over at Barclays. The firm citing expectations of lower oil prices. And this downgrade, it's Chevron's second of the day after Redburn cut the stock to sell, Shanali.
And it's time now for the Wall Street Beat. Today we are looking at Thoma Bravo's purchase of Boeing's flight navigation unit for nearly $11 billion. Joining us now, Holden Spate, Thoma Bravo managing partner. Holden, I've got to say, you've kind of blown me away by your deal making so far this year. You're stepping in at scale at a time when many people are not. And when you think about this deal in particular, What were
Forest factories out. Yeah, it looks like it was positive, guys. The news release.
And what Boeing was able to put up to make this deal attractive
To be honest,
to you?
indices will keep on pushing higher. I think, Gift, you were mentioning Bitcoin. Bitcoin's been pumping out of its mind, which, to be honest, we're not surprised over because of the indices. I hope you guys are able to get into some of the coins that I posted inside the Discord yesterday as well. Gold is just continuing to drop lower. I'm going to try to see if we can get in, you know, a little bit of an aggressive entry here for EU or potentially GU. I did have a short setup for EU. Let me just see if it played out. Yeah, it did. It did.
Very profitable. So this is a
so for GU, I was looking at this half-hour imbalance to see if we can get a short from there. It's moving so far. I'm going to set an alert for that half-hour candle's wick on GU.
And I think really what Boeing was looking for.
It's going to be a pretty interesting target.
Closing, speed to signing, and a value that worked for its shareholders. And I think, fortunately, we were able to provide all three. We developed a great relationship with Boeing. There's still a lot of work to be done to transition this company out of Boeing. But this is a very important company.
Take out Tokyo range is low.
We developed a great relationship with Boeing.
There's quite some space. There's a lot of room to the downside for the GU.
In a time that's relatively volatile.
Well,
so we're really going for it, guys.
Going forward, because my understanding is
I'm going to set another alert at another low. What's gold doing? Gold's still dropping.
Data that is generated by these products.
Okay, it looks like gold just stretched away from us, really.
When it comes to other potential sales here,
I do want a re-entry before the dollar takes out the high, but it does look very strong.
This business, Jeppesen, and we spent a lot of time on this, obviously, but it owns all the IP that it's owned historically. Now, Boeing has some internal use. They have some rights to use some of that, but Boeing is not interesting, nor are they really able to compete with us with our own product set. It's very important anytime you do a carve-out to ensure that the business is allowed to get all the IP that it is, and that was a point, obviously, that we needed to, and others needed to negotiate. But to do a deal of this size and magnitude, we have all the relevant the relevant IP that we need to run the business and continue to operate it in the way that it's been run.
We were talking with Tony Bancroft at Gabelli, and I said, "Hey, man, we got Holden Spade of Tomo Bravo on later. What would you ask him?" He said, "Well, I'd really like to know what the margins are in that business."
It's very strong, very aggressive.
I don't know that it's been shared publicly, so maybe I'll just say that, you know, I think, look, we have a very special operating playbook when it comes to data and software companies. This company does run at really nice margins already. Boeing has done a really nice job of getting the margins to a spot where they're good. Now, we think with our operating
I'm going to go break even.
Enhance the growth rate of the business and improve the margin profile over time, which is very consistent with all the other, you know, large.
Okay, so ideally, what I'm looking at for EU, if we can get it, right?
What are your plans for Jeppesen? Are you combining all of
right, so with the most recent break of these lows here,
under the Jeppesen brand, you know,
right, I would like to look at this high being a protected high. Okay, ideally, if you don't mind having a little bit more risk, you can cover this high here, which is the safer high. But for me, in terms of R&R and it being a more aggressive entry, I'm going to go for that low there, with my target being this daily low here. Now, I'm not too sure if we will take out this low, but with the strength of the dollar at the moment, right, if the dollar does close somewhere up here, you know, on the 1 hour, on the 4 hour, then I'm going to have to anticipate the dollar returning back up into the range, right, returning back up to 102, 103 level. Yeah, ideally that's where I think we would head to next, which is that monthly balanced price range, yeah. So again, it is still early days, but still trying to just forecast the move. Right now, even with this weekly candle, if we do close bullish and we close above last week's high, I think, guys, next week, or if we do take out that high, right, this high here on the daily, the next week has a very high chance of us being a bullish week as well. Okay, so far the price action that we're getting is good.
Well, we're looking forward to watching how this builds.
We just have to see how today closes. and potentially next week is looking like a very high probable
Meanwhile, a quick check on the S&P 500 soaring right now, up about 3%, hit session highs of 3.4% just a couple minutes ago. Volume.
So for now,
we'll bring you all the action next. This is Open Interest.
So for now, that's my aggressive re-entry, yo. Again, if price gets there, you hear some gavels on my side, or you know, I tell you guys like, hey, boom, 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 you know, because there's only so much one man can do, eh? So I'm gonna cover that high there. Alright, looks like I have to give it 41 pips. Where can I get 1 to 2? To around. It's okay. It's not ideal, but it's okay. Don't get me wrong. You can definitely just put your stop loss above this 5-minute candle's high, but I'm just gonna give it a little bit more room to breathe, room to, you know, do nonsense.
I know it's like your Super Bowl, right?
I can't wait. It's like opening presents in the morning.
All right, it will be exciting.
Nobody
Gold
covers
is still
earnings like
stretching.
Bloomberg. Bloomberg surveillance covers the latest in global markets and the political
See what the
events that
S&P is doing.
influence your
S&P is
world.
heading higher.
Join Jonathan Farrow, Lisa Abramowitz,
See the
and
Nasdaq.
Anne-Marie Hordern. Only
There's a
on
lot of chop
Bloomberg.
going on here at the
Context
moment
changes everything.
for the stock
Welcome
market.
to the
I'll
world
give it a
of
second to just breathe.
decentralized finance.
Massive outperformance from Bitcoin.
Bloomberg is covering all things crypto, the people,
The tectonic shift emanating from Washington.
All we're looking for is clear rules and an ability to build in the United States.
Crypto shouldn't be partisan.
the transactions,
Really a record-breaking moment.
Crypto VC is back.
and the technology.
It's really the beginning of a global on-chain economy.
And if America doesn't embrace it, we're going to be left behind.
Bloomberg Crypto, only on Bloomberg.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute geopolitical news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm David Gura in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and this is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Open Interest. I'm Matt Miller. Let's get a check on what's going on with stocks absolutely soaring after that Wall Street Journal story. Okay, we've come off a bit at 285, up 2.9% really, but volume is still huge. NASDAQ up 3.4%. A ton of stock stories. No news on Nvidia, but Tesla, obviously after the earnings. Boeing beat on earnings as well. AT&T taking all of Verizon's customers, and Harley-Davidson going tariff-free in India. I want to get back to you, Katie, because the Wall Street Journal headlines really pumped up this market.
Yeah, just a flurry of news coming from the Wall Street Journal, Shonali. When it comes to tariffs, those levels likely coming down. This one's interesting, too. Trump chose not to fire Powell on Besant and Lutnick concerns.
Very shocking.
So,
the two market men are telling the president
right now, if we anticipate with this half hour and this hourly candle, I realistically, for now anyways, only see this pushing higher. I only see the dollar pushing higher. I know we've got this little hourly candle inside of here, but it may be sufficient enough to give us a low of the hour, maybe somewhere around here, or maybe back in this little range, and then the high of the hour to stretch up. I think these highs is where price is reaching towards, at least for now. So I want to see if we can target Tokyo's range as high. Where the pullback will come exactly, we'll just have to see if we get lower into here. Let's take a look at GU, what GU is doing. Because GU hasn't even taken out its low. GU could also offer up some shorting opportunities as well. If you guys are more interested in GU, you like a little bit more volatility, right? What you can do is take a short here. Let me move this out of the way. You can take a short there, and then I would say at the bare minimum have your SO above the imbalance candles high, which is around 21 pips. Alright, to the low will give you about a 3%. I don't really like GU, trading GU all the time because it's not very symmetrical. Sometimes GU just tends to be in a world of its own, which is totally fine, but
you're building another art museum.
It's not something that I enjoy
now. Louvre's
in
big
particular.
enough. Why do you need a Guggenheim as well, right next door?
Okay, so those are the parameters. We're gonna wait for the new hourly candle. We've got 5 minutes left of this hour. We are currently pushing up. We don't have 5 minutes. We got 2 minutes, 1 minute. So let's see. This right now, we've had a test of this 1 minute candle here. It does look incredibly bullish for the dollar. You know, the dollar's held, and we just explode in literally 15 minutes. Well, you know, we've moved so much.
Come to Saadiyat Cultural District, and if you allow me to curate the story, you start off at the Natural History Museum. At the Natural History Museum, you get a glimpse and you get an understanding
stretching,
of
we're stretching, EU stretching.
How our Earth came to be, how our universe came to be.
We're getting very close to Tokyo Ranges low.
Once you leave the Natural History
I'm gonna
Museum,
set an alert for that as well.
The Sheikh Zayed National Museum. There you understand the history of this great land. Not just the history of the country, but the people of this land that have been a part of this land for over
GDX has just been ranging sideways this whole time.
And the future looks like here in the UAE. From there, you maneuver yourself to the Louvre Abu Dhabi, which is a beautiful universal museum. It is universal in its thematic approach. So there, you basically see a part of you on an equal pedestal with the entire world.
Oh, by the way, I've moved my SL for EU, this original entry to here. What's the price I've got here? Stop loss 1.3720. Yeah, so it's around here. I've moved my stop to.
Now weekdays, only on Bloomberg.
Let's update the Discord.
News on the Hour, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
Alright, so we've got a lot of alerts going off. What do we have? EU's just taking out Asia's low.
After President Trump softened his
Literally
stance
right
on Fed Chair
now.
Jerome Powell and steep tariffs
Again, a
on
really
Chinese
sharp
products.
rejection.
Dow's up 1,000.
DXY is also taking out that high. So essentially, we're probably going to get a really aggressive pullback right now. The new hourly candles open up very high. So I reckon we will get an aggressive pullback.
I said, well, what do you think?
So what I'm going to do
by and large, I heard,
is...
okay, this is great. There's some
The thing is,
optimism, but there was
this
also
hourly candle,
skepticism
if I look at it for EU, there's so much imbalance.
At the Vatican.
Right, I do think we will eventually take out this low here for sure. But the question is, if you're happy with this, right, in terms of this price action now we've got, feel free to take it off, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to close some of this position, modify, market execution.
So we'll follow it.
I'm going to close off half of this.
Crews are making progress containing a massive wildfire near the Jersey Shore. CBS News Philadelphia's Rosti Matei says about 3,000 people forced from their homes have been allowed to return.
I'm going to leave the rest run, do its thing.
Yesterday, it pushed all the way up against the
and in
parkway,
fact, what I will do on top of that
they
as
actually had
well.
to shut it down for hours overnight. That too, though, has since reopened.
A spring break tragedy in Panama City, Florida. Police say 3 high school seniors from Concord, Massachusetts, including a 2-time state diving champion, were killed when their SUV collided with a tractor trailer, making a U-turn. A 4th student's fighting for her life.
So I've
Police
taken
in
something
LA say
there,
they've arrested a man
and
captured
what I'll
on
do,
surveillance video committing arborcide.
that's not really much.
CBS's Michael
What I'll do is I will
Police
push
say the
back
suspect used a
the
chainsaw
stop
late
loss from
Friday
here
night. There's no
to
word
here,
on a motive. Residents found the
and
toppled
we're going to
trees
look
under
for that
sidewalks the
re-entry
next
there
morning.
as well.
I don't know why
on
someone
the
would
lower
take away
time
from the
frame,
trees, especially in
inside of here.
downtown where there's not a lot of opportunity for trees to grow.
Local arborist Stephanie Kerry.
It takes seconds with a chainsaw to erase decades of potential environmental
I'm going to close the copy
benefits,
traders
so
and
that is
the copy trader app, and we'll close that and profit as well.
Alright, so here we are in front of the elephants.
Alright, cool. So with that candle now printed, okay, let's just see what's going to happen.
Tech contributor Ian Scher.
YouTube is a
What's gold doing?
cultural
Gold is just
force
stretching.
unlike
I'm so
almost
like,
anything else. It
I knew
has
gold was a
reach
short today.
that is
far larger.
But I didn't
than
want to
most
just
of
trail
us
the
can
shorts. I should have just
ever
entered
really
straight away.
imagine.
The Nasdaq's up
But that's
4%.
fine.
This is CBS
We're getting something
News.
out of EU. So GU's finally taken out that low there from this morning's news for the pound. The pound had services PMI earlier on today. Services and manufacturing PMI amongst, yeah, that was it. So this GU short, I can't lie, it's not bad at all. It's even going to give you a better R&R, because when you look at it, if you do manage to get this short, right, its Tokyo range's low is still intact. So there's a much easier target to the downside rather than the likes of Euro USD, right? So just bear that in mind. If you haven't taken out any profits, I would suggest you do so. Yeah, I'll keep that profit target there.
Students, parents, and fellow teachers in Central Florida
there's a good chance, right? There's a real good chance that
Public Schools fired Melissa Calhoun for calling a student by their preferred gender identity name rather than by a birth name.
Why are you guys talking
State
about
law
gender
says
identity?
parents have to
Let me mute
approve.
this. If you ain't talking something that I actually want to know, or anything financial related, I don't care. Okay, so daily here, right? If we look at this daily picture here, let me check if my audio's on. If we look at the daily picture here on EU, you know, I reckon, well, we'll see how today goes anyways, but there's still a potential for EU to actually take out this low here on the daily, right, which is also last week's low, right? So let's just see what happens, because if we take out last week's low and we have the closure beneath this candle's low, then there's a very high chance that the week after or the weeks to come will also be very bearish, right? If we get that play, I'm only going to be looking to short majors, right? So that's going to be the breakdown for that. Looking at gold too, gold's just been sliding, guys. No gift says, not gift. Richard says, look at gold, it's been dropping. Yeah, it's been dropping. I've not been in it, so I'm not going to try and just trail it, you know what I mean? Should have been in it from the jump. If I'm not in it now, then it's totally fine.
I'm excited.
You're
Lots
bringing
of
us a good
headlines.
tape. You're bringing us a good tape here. The stocks are up a snapback rally again today. Coming up, we're going to check in.
I mean, if you want to obviously short gold, you can just use the continuation model for gold.
Hear from Treasury Secretary Bessent.
You know, you can just wait for a pullback and just short gold.
Treasury Secretary
that's totally valid as well.
Q&A with the Institute of International Finance President and CEO Tim Adams. We'll bring the Q&A live to you to see kind of where we're going here with some of these economic policy. Stuart Paul, U.S. economist with the Bloomberg Economics. He's going to join us, give us his thoughts on Secretary Bessent's comments as well. Craig Trudell, Bloomberg Global Autos. He's going to recap Tesla's earnings. The numbers were ugly, but I think the big news is Mr. Elon Musk is going to be coming back to Tesla in a more hands-on way going forward. So that's positive, I think, for that company and that stock. And that's one of the reasons the stock is higher today. So we got a lot coming up in the next couple of hours. Let's kick it all off with John Tucker and a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, guys, this flash being brought to you by IBKR. Will U.S. initial jobless claims exceed 260,000 for the week ending May 10th, 2025? Yes was recently at 8%. Trade your prediction with IBKR Forecast Trader at ibkr.com/forecast. Last trading day for this contract, May 14th. Let's start off with the data. New home sales a lot better than expected, up 7.4% for March. The expectation was only for 1.3%. Right now, the S&P 500 3% higher, up 162 points. The Dow up 1,047 points. The NASDAQ 100 up 655 points. Risk on after President Trump backed off his threats against Fed Chair Jay Powell and indicated he may be backing down from his tough stance on China. Tesla, as you said, Paul, among the most active, walking back from earlier guidance for vehicle sales, but Elon Musk is back. Meantime, Rianne Betrione at Callan Family Office says investors are eager to seize on any good news.
The market seems to be looking for a reason to rebound. I mean, we've had, sentiment is at such a low level that any news we're getting that is better than a worst case scenario is really leading to a nice bounce in the market.
And Intel
Britain says went short 32.98. 32.98. That's around here. That's nice, bro.
2-year yield right now up 3 basis points, 382. The 10-year down 10 basis points. That is at 429. We check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Isabel and Paul.
All right, John, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Isabel Lee sitting in for Alex Steele. I'm Paul Sweeney. We're live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, and we are streaming on YouTube as well. The markets are ripping, as John was just reported, the S&P up 3%. Let's take a look at some of the stocks on the move today. We're joined by
might take a little short here on gold,
All right, so we got to start with Tesla, right? Because you said it. The numbers were not good. The company missed on both revenue.
The pip count on gold right now
fact,
is just insane.
Years. Results showed weakness in automotive business, tariff trouble, and expanding energy business.
It's like it's too low to short, man.
Elon Musk told investors what they wanted to hear.
It's way too low to short.
From his role in Doge in May significantly and focus more on Tesla, which is what they wanted. He said his work establishing the group is, quote, mostly done.
Anyways, let's just see what happens with that. I've taken a little short down
on
gold.
The protests going on, they've sprung up in recent months.
Got some profits to play with.
Work. And Tesla have been struggling, right? Slumping sales,
let's try not to give that back.
But he tried to reassure investors, and this is something interesting he said. He said, at Tesla, we've gone through many a crisis over the years. This is not one of those times. And because of all this, he said, the shares have been up more, as much as 6% since after the open.
What about Boeing? I feel like this company just can't catch a break. Are they showing signs of stability?
Yes. Yeah, and their shares up as much as 6% since the open. First quarter results, good news, topped estimates, smaller than expected adjusted loss per share. Here's the thing, too. It used $2.3 billion in free cash. The 3 months ended March 31st, ramped up jet production. So you know about the 737 MAX jetliner. Well, they want to raise output to 38 jets per month and then try and increase that to 42 units later this year. And that would really help, generate the cash that's been used up by different things, right? The recent strike, manufacturing crisis, too. Kelly Ortberg said 2025 is their turnaround year.
I am flying a 737 MAX jet Saturday morning down there during North Carolina. So I'll do my part there. But I mean, they need to get that production up. And I quote George Ferguson at Bloomberg Intelligence. He says they're on the right track, but ideally they need to be in the 50 plane range in terms of monthly production. So they're getting there. So I guess that's right. And the cash burn, that free cash flow, negative free cash flow came in better than expected for the quarter. So that's, I guess, some good news for that stock. Another, just blue chip back in the day stock, AT&T.
Yeah, and there's, a lot of competition, right? You have Verizon, you have T-Mobile, so a lot of competition. So they did share some good news. They attracted more new wireless subscribers than expected, 324,000 mobile phone customers the first 3 months of the year. It's highly competitive. It comes after Verizon. You remember yesterday they reported a loss of subscribers. And the thing is, consumers, they're a little bit more price conscious, right? We're holding on to our phones a little bit longer. They've rolled out fresh promotions. You've probably seen a lot of the promotions lately. Also, a beat on revenue for AT&T grew to $30.6 billion. It also reiterated its 2025 full-year guidance. But we continue with this, guys, because you have T-Mobile that's following up tomorrow.
I mean,
all my alerts
I'm a Verizon Wireless. You're AT&T. I'm AT&T. John, what's your wireless carrier?
I have no idea.
What?
It's the one you get with AARP.
Oh my gosh.
I'm kidding. I don't know. No,
Isabel,
it's
I'm guilty. I grabbed
Verizon,
my phone.
yes.
I'm
There we
Verizon
go.
too. I used to be T-Mobile.
Oh, interesting. Well, Tom Keene is T-Mobile. So it just shows that's the competitive aspect of the wireless business.
Yeah, and it goes. It's very diverse. But yes, I will go with
getting on my nerves, man.
And it's just we never change it. I don't know why.
I'm in Verizon because I'm in a family plan with friends, and the friend just decided to move. So I'm agnostic. I'm like, you go wherever you want. I just want to keep my number. That's an important thing.
All right, you know how I kicked all my offspring out? They're off the dole.
Wow.
They get nothing except
the family plan.
Yes, and I could take it even one step further, but I won't. But
no.
Anyway, there's a lot of people on my family plan there. All right, Lisa Mateo, thank you so much.
Can I join?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody else
Sign
is.
me up.
I mean, it's crazy. Lisa Mateo, she has 7 jobs here at Bloomberg, and one of them is doing the stocks report. So for more conversations like this, listen to our new Stock Movers podcast. Subscribe for 5-minute episodes on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Listen to Stock Movers on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So there we go. Isabel, big move in the market today, following up on yesterday.
Definitely. And I feel like the big headline now is White House considers slashing China tariffs to de-escalate trade war. That's according to Wall Street Journal. And a lot of the notes I've read this morning was about that. They were like, why is this aggressive stance fading quickly? The comments came without getting anything in return from China. And some were also alluding that maybe Trump is indeed listening to some moderate voices in his camp, like Secretary Scott Bessent and even Howard Lutnick. And look, we have agreements with Japan and India looking promising, but China's far more complicated.
Yep, and it's interesting. We had Chris Crescente on from MAI Advisors in our studio just earlier this morning. He says he's not buying the dips. He likes to see this positive rhetoric on tariffs and so on, but there's still that level of uncertainty.
All right, so we're getting closer and closer
you just don't
to
know.
the potential re-entry.
The tweet could come out in the next hour.
The more and more I
reversing all
look
this.
at GU,
Absolutely. So that level of uncertainty keeps
the
it
more
from kind of
I
stepping in and
see
trying to,
GU being a
I guess,
better
buy the
option
dip.
for us.
We do have Michael Kantrowitz of Pepper Sandler saying that this is a market that's largely driven by macro forces, and we just have to expect large swings.
All right, let's get back to what we're hearing on the economic front. Again, we're going to be having U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He'll be participating in a Q&A at the Institute of International Finance. We're going to bring that Q&A to you in just moments. But let's get a little bit of a preview here with Katerina Sarajeeva, Bloomberg Federal Reserve reporter. Katerina, what do you expect to hear from our Secretary of Treasury?
Yeah, I think it should be interesting to hear. You know, we've heard some comments today from the Trump administration just on the China tariffs that they are, you know, walking back kind of some of the more extreme tariffs that we've seen being imposed. You know, Trump saying that he's willing to negotiate. So I wonder if we'll hear the same from the Treasury Secretary. You know, we've kind of heard those types of comments from him before, so I wouldn't be surprised about that.
What do you make of the JP Morgan comment? Because that got a lot of attention. But for instance, we have Neil Dutta of Renaissance Macro saying that this isn't new. Scott Bessent has been saying this for a while.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure which comment you're referring to.
The JP Morgan comment when he said that reciprocal tariffs announced on Liberation Day were a cap, which would go down.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've just seen in general a lot of back and forth with the tariffs, right? I think at first everyone kind of thought that they would be used as a negotiating tactic, and then, you know, and then we kind of saw the sweeping nature of them, and that kind of spooked everyone. But we've certainly seen them walk back.
It's very fast.
A lot of what was initially announced on Liberation Day. So
but I'm anticipating another test.
To see a bit
At 1 minute,
kind
kind of did close the doji, so it's quite nice.
China comments are kind of in line with that sort of sentiment.
Katerina,
I do think this will push up just a little bit more, though.
Talked to some guests here in the studio.
I was really annoyed that my alert's not working. 1 second, let me reload TradingView.
Tariffs to a meaningful amount. Some damage has already been done, whether it's supply chains being disrupted, whether it's orders being delayed or canceled, that you could see, you know, some empty shelves or some thinned out shelves. And the consumer's already is likely to feel this, even if the tariffs are walked back. What do your sources say?
Yeah.
Should work now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. We have already seen an impact on the business community, right? Investment has already been pulled back. Plans have been pulled back. I think you're right. There have been effects on the supply chain as well already. I think any pulling back in tariffs would for sure be a positive in terms of what we could see for businesses and for growth later in the year, but there is already an impact in place. And not for nothing, I think we've already seen some businesses suffer and some small businesses shutter because of them.
How unprecedented is the walking back of Trump when he says he's going to fire Powell? I feel like this isn't new. He said this a lot, but recently it's becoming more aggressive. And then he walked back and markets were relieved. How relieved are your sources?
Yeah, I think quite relieved. I think any talk around that is nerve-wracking for markets, but also kind of on a larger level, right? Central
So
bank
right now,
independence
what we can
in
see is
developed
about
countries has been
50% of the
the
imbalance.
standard for decades.
Right,
And it's really
we've just whipped into
scary,
on the 5 minute.
both from a
Now, I'm
day-to-day
wondering if we can
volatility
actually dip down a lot
perspective, but
lower.
also just from an economic
Right, that's what I'm wondering
perspective.
if we can
It's
get
really
that.
scary because there's a lot of research out there showing that an independent central bank leads over time to lower inflation, to better economic outcomes. So it's something that really concerns everyone, from markets to economists.
So, kind of,
It goes back on the rise.
The view of kind of where we go from here in terms of tariffs and economics. Is it just up to President
The more and
Trump?
more I
Is there
look at
some
G, I'm telling you
time
guys,
period
the
where you
more and
think
more
we
it
might
looks
get
more appealing.
maybe at least some concrete policy one way or the other?
Yeah, I mean, so
Bitcoin's
we're in this
tanking, stock market
90-day
dropping.
reprieve right now. So I think everyone is
Bitcoin
kind of
tanking.
waiting
I
to
better
see what
see a big
happens
move there,
in this
Gift.
time.
Okay, yeah, it is
We're
dropping.
seeing some news
Finally,
of
wow, we've taken
negotiations
out a lot
trickle
of the
out.
highs there,
The
man.
comments again about China,
Yeah.
I think kind of help give people
I mean,
a
to be
little
honest with
bit
this,
of
ooh,
indication of where things
this
might be
hourly
going.
candle, ooh.
But it is still very much
There's
a
a
wait
nice
and
short
see
there
mode
on
of
Bitcoin we
what
missed,
happens with all these different countries and where the
Ooh,
rates really end
that's really
up. I think
nice.
most people expect there to
Look at
be
that high,
some sort of
swept,
tariff,
low
whether it's this
with this
10%
one.
across the
Breaks
board
these lows
or
here.
slightly higher rates
Pull
for
back,
some trade
short.
partners.
That's really nice.
So that's kind of a
Should at
known
least go
right
for like
now,
this
but
low here.
I think that
Or this
otherwise
one as an easier
it's very
target.
much uncertain right
Yeah, that
now,
sure
and
looks real
very
nice
much
on
kind of
Bitcoin.
everyone looking to the White House to see where this ultimately lands.
To Paul's
See
point,
if you
the
can actually
U.S.
get a
is probably
pullback.
suffering a lot of reputational damage with this back and forth. Trust has been faded. What are your international investors or sources telling you? Are they trying to move away from the U.S. when it comes to investing, or are they waiting in the sidelines? What is the sense you're getting?
Yeah, I think you're seeing a little bit of that, right? We've seen that in the asset moves for sure, with folks moving out of treasuries, out of the dollar, out of U.S. stocks, kind of all at the same time. So that's definitely an indication of a little bit less appetite for U.S. assets. But I don't think you're seeing it too widespread yet. And I think we're still in a place where some of that could be reversed, just depending on what happens. But yeah, I think this has really kind of jolted this global order that we were all accustomed to,
These moving off.
again, over the past many decades. And we're seeing a bit of a shift right now. How widespread and how long-lasting that shift is,
I still do think
really
this will
depends
probably have another
how
push up.
these tariff policies ultimately
G just
play out.
hasn't pulled back
All right,
at all.
Katerina, thank you so
So
much. We really appreciate it,
let's
Katerina.
see.
Sorry about she is
I
a
still
Federal
do
Reserve
think this is a
Clerk
short
Overlord. She's down in
anyways, but
Houston, Texas, and she is a
I think,
graduate of the University of
sometimes the
North Carolina
dollar,
at Chapel Hill. Despite that,
yeah, even this
she's
hourly
an
candle
excellent
here on
Overlord.
GU just
She'll
looks
get in
so
a few
good.
minutes of her time. And again,
Looks
we are
really,
waiting
really good.
for U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He's participating in a Q&A with the Institute of International Finance, and we'll bring that Q&A to you when it starts in just moments. But in the meantime,
We'll see how that
let's get a little bit of
does.
a reset here. We'll go to John Tucker for any Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, the major stock indexes, they are surging off the best levels of the session. The risk-on move fueled by the idea, the president taking a less controversial stance toward China in the trade war, as well as the fact that Mr. Trump backed away from threats to try to fire the Fed chair, Jerome Powell. Business activity expanding at the slowest pace since 2023. Output expectations, they've deteriorated, and price pressures mounting as tariffs created headaches for companies. These are the findings of the S&P Global Flash April Composite Index. The output at manufacturers and service providers dropping 2.3 points to 51.2. S&P 500, 139 points higher right now. That's up 2.7%. We're at 54.28 on the index. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 880 points. And the NASDAQ 100 right now up 598 points. That is a rise of 3.2%. We have 10 of the 11 major industry groups in the S&P 500. They are higher, being led by consumer discretionary. And that is home to shares of Tesla. Those shares up 5.6% since Elon Musk coming back to the company. Boeing reporting first quarter results exceeding Wall Street estimates. Smaller than expected adjusted loss per share of 49 cents. And right now, Boeing is up 5.6%. Rite Aid running low on cash. They're preparing to sell themselves in pieces as they head toward their second bankruptcy. Rite Aid is among a slew of retail companies struggled the past couple of years as consumers cut back on spending because of the high rate of inflation. Two-year yields right now 381. That's up 2 basis points. Then you have the 10-year down 8 basis points, and that is at 431 right now. Oh, here's one for you, and I'm not going to embarrass you.
Okay.
The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, planning to borrow nearly $300 million to fund a major renovation and expansion. This includes a new event center dedicated to horror. Stephen King and his wife stayed at this hotel way back when, in the early 70s. They were the only guests because the hotel was preparing to close for the winter the next day. And that was the basis for his book,
The Shining.
The Shining, in the movie.
I thought that was based upon something in upstate New York, you know.
No. The hotel out there. Beautiful hotel, by the way.
Awesome.
But that's a cool story.
Yep, very good. All right, John Tucker, thank you so much.
Isabel,
we appreciate that.
No, have you seen The Shining? Have you read the book?
No, but it sounds interesting.
Oh, John,
and I'm interested.
John.
Oh, red rum?
No.
Okay, never mind. We won't go into it. Anyway, that is your Bloomberg Business Flash and more. Back to you guys.
All right, John Tucker, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Isabel Lee sitting in for Alex Steele. I'm Paul Sweeney. We're live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Right now, let's head to U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He's participating in Q&A with Institute of International Finance President and CEO Tim Adams. Let's listen in right now.
Institution like the IMF, World Bank, I must say there's a collective sigh of relief across this town right now, because the concern coming into this week is that you were going to do exactly what you said you're not going to do, which is the U.S. would withdraw, but you want to lead. What you're asking for is simply getting back to factory settings, right? Focused approach, and deal with the issues that you see are most paramount, correct?
Correct. As I said in my confirmation hearings, I think U.S. engagement with the international financial and multilateral institutions, we should engage, and we should be in it to win it for the American people and for the rest of the countries and for the client countries.
20 years ago, a senior U.S. Treasury official gave a speech very similar to this, calling on the IMF and said the IMF was asleep at the wheel and dealing with imbalances. Hank Paulson started the Strategic Economic Dialogue with the Chinese. Every Treasury Secretary since then have had an approach. So how will you do this differently, and how do you think that you'll proceed in this approach? What is your philosophy? What is your tools, and how will you execute on this?
Well, look, I think that our moves toward reordering the financial
it's a nice move on EU.
Is a start. I think
it's a nice move.
Today, as I reaffirm our engagement,
guys, if you're watching the live stream right now, you're enjoying the stream, don't forget to leave a like.
And back to basics for the
subscribe if you're new as well.
And again,
caught this really nice re-entry here on EU.
We want to
moving.
And we want to see.
It looks like we're going to hold 50% of that 5-minute imbalance, and we're going to create a new high.
And I were talking about
that looks pretty certain now.
Global rebalancing has been a topic for more than 20 years. And
gold's dropping back down again.
Some countries may have a 100-year perspective. We don't.
Again, for all of you that have been inside the live stream from the start, you lot would have all seen the analysis, the entries, etc., etc.
You'll be meeting with your Chinese counterparts. What will you tell them in the sense of how they obviously are aware that there's huge imbalances, their manufacturing capacity is enormous, especially in things like automobiles. How will you help them understand that it's not just about talking,
do you feel like gold can just do a little blip up?
Look, I don't think I have to help them understand.
15-minute candle looks really good so far for EU.
And it's just a matter
our candle is not bad as well.
And will. So
it's not bad.
I believe I first went to Japan in
looks like a classic continuation this.
Within 12 months of the peak of the bubble.
GU, we didn't get the re-entry to go short for GU, unfortunately.
Of that unwind, a decade of malaise, and then
let's see.
In 2012,
like with the price action that we're getting now, I don't think we will get a pullback.
Prime Minister,
but
Shinzo Abe.
Let's just see.
And he knew that
you know the DXY can be fugazi sometimes, so if it does start to pull back down and we get another test up here, I would like to take that entry again.
Economic run, and I think that our Chinese counterparts that will come to this realization.
So far, from the price action that we've seen today, and anticipating what tomorrow's candle will do,
sometimes it takes an
right, we do look very likely to take out Tuesday's. Take out last week's high.
There is an opportunity
we look
for
likely.
a big deal here.
You know, in terms of looking at this daily candle, just pull back into it, pushing up, taking out the high of yesterday. So let's see.
Less consumption. If China is serious on,
let's see, we're just taking out yesterday's high. So
if
we stop somewhere around here, like I'm still confident, like tomorrow will also be a long. If we look at Bitcoin, did give us, I wasn't looking at it, but Bitcoin does look like a pretty decent short, like okay short for now.
Let's do it together. This is an incredible opportunity.
I'll be careful though. Stock market is still printing higher.
He could call it a beautiful rebalancing.
Indeed. But a big part of that will also be our own fiscal imbalance. And as you mentioned, we're running deficit 6% of GDP at the top of the cycle. Not sustainable.
I'm going to keep setting some alerts now.
How important is
so we can keep an eye on these pairs
as part of this larger rebalancing?
But for the time being, we've had some pretty decent moves. If you guys weren't here on the stream from the start, I don't know what to tell you guys. I don't know what to tell you. I did give you the setup inside of Discord. So if you're not inside of my free Discord, link to the Discord is in the description box down below. Okay, I gave you guys the potential EU short before it happened. Literally, probably like 10 minutes before it happened. So if you didn't take that trade there, that's perfectly fine. There'll be another. But join the Discord so that you don't miss out on the next one. Like I feel like gold might just give us a little bit of a push from here, you know, just a little cheeky push. Nothing crazy, just a little cheeky push. Gold's taken out that low there, so I'm completely out of gold now. Like,
the interest rates.
I do think if we look at the daily or even the 4 hour for gold, we can probably get to this candle's high, right, to test it, right, test the structure, which is 3245.485. So I reckon if we don't get it today, maybe tomorrow we'll get it, you know, by the end of the day.
Policies in place to the deserved capital flows.
Let's see, EU is pushing back up now.
It doesn't mean that the price on the Bloomberg screen every day. And it also has different.
I'll tell you what, if EU does push back up, then shorts are on. Shorts are definitely on. Guys, make sure you are liking the stream, yeah? Make sure you are liking the stream.
Your question
helps with the YouTube algorithms, reach out to more people and whatnot.
We did not get here quickly with the spending. The U.S. does not have a revenue problem.
Bitcoin's hourly candle does look like a very nice short, so we'll see if it can actually get down there. Do I really want to trade this? I am tempted. I'll be honest with you guys. I am tempted to take a short here on Bitcoin. But I'm just going to stay on the sideline. It's going against the NASDAQ right now, and I don't like trading Bitcoin when the NAS and Bitcoin are not flowing in tandem.
2% nominal growth. Or 2% inflation, projected 1.8% growth, which I think could be much higher if we implement our economic policies.
You reaffirmed the strong dollar policy first articulated by Bob Rubin. Valerie Giscard, just saying in the 1960s, talked about the U.S. exorbitant privilege of the dollar. There are some in this town who question that privilege and actually see it as a burden. Do you see it as a privilege?
That the U.S. sits at the center of the global economy is enabled by the use of dollars, and that it's natural that the usage would come down over
moving
time.
Stop losses for EU.
I think that the U.S. will always, for my lifetime, be the reserve currency. I actually am not sure that anyone else wants it. I can't remember. One of the European
gold just looks like it can give us a little bit of a blip. This is just a instinct thing.
I can't remember. Said, oh, well, the euro.
There's no like logic to it. I just have a feeling gold will just push up, just a little blip.
Substantial appreciation in the euro for export economies. it's a
So
lot of
far,
pressure.
the
And
gut feeling is correct. So
I think that the reaffirming our belief in these
how have you
international
taken out my alert up here?
is also part of that.
You mentioned the euro. You mentioned in your comments Mario Draghi's report from last year. There was the letter report before that.
Anyways, guys, again, don't forget to leave a like on the stream, guys.
A
Yeah.
much more a buoyant atmosphere in Europe. They see this as an opportunity for them. I said something about a.
We'll probably have to sit in this
pretty positive on Europe.
in this EU move for quite some time.
Some of that demand, the world is reliant on
GU
US
is
final
heading
demand
lower.
to shift some of that demand for Europe. Is this a positive?
I would have loved to take a short on GU. You know, I can't even remember the last time I took a GU trade.
Line. It wasn't always the way a trained diplomat would have done. But I think we should all congratulate President Trump. He has done what a succession of European leaders have tried to do for the past 26 years.
Who have we got on the stream right now, guys? Let me know. How are you guys doing?
The French, the Italians.
Are you new? Have you subscribed?
Other European countries.
What pairs are you looking like at the moment?
You
know, we've got a few of you guys in the stream right now. Go into the live chat. Let's have a conversation.
Increase their fiscal spend and drive the European economy. And that I applaud these nascent efforts because it's a combination. It's a combination of economic stimulus, and it is a combination of burden sharing on the European continent for defense. And you know, as I've said many times before, economic security is national security is economic security. So if this
Brian says EU trade is annoying, man. Might just end it there. Why so, bro? Did you catch the re-entry, or did you catch the first entry higher? Or are you long on EU?
He said you're going to be
what setup are you in? What trade are you in?
On military spending, and this 2% number today, he was right.
So you're already taking on these tasks. You have China, more consumption, less investment, deal with their manufacturing excess capacity. Europe is a great opportunity. The U.S. rebalancing here, including on fiscal. So what do you want the IMF to do? What would you like to hear from
right now? Because the DXY has taken out yesterday's daily high. Like I feel like we might just chill inside of this range here for some time. You know, it could be 1 hour, could be 2 hours, could be 4 hours, right? I don't know. But I do think eventually we will break out of this range higher. Even if we do pull back down and test, like the low that we need to look at is, hold on.
And the World Bank, you discussed about
was it on the half hour or was it on the 15-minute?
Medium-sized countries that
no, it was on the half hour.
Okay.
Is this low? Which I also think is the hourly candle's low. Okay, so we shouldn't really break beneath this low. Ideally, even if we do pull down, we'll probably end up testing this 5-minute candle and then rebounding. But I think we're in the clear. Like from what I can see here, I feel like this is sufficient enough to give us a new high. It might just take its time. You know? I mean, you are trading EU after all.
I have a teenager who sometimes wants to be treated like a child.
Tell me, Brian, are you in EU longs, EU shorts? Like I would see why someone would go long in EU right now. So I wouldn't blame you.
You mentioned energy, specifically nuclear, during the campaign, and since you've become secretary, you've talked about energy production is one of your important legs. The U.S. produces about 13 million barrels of oil a day, the largest producer in the world. What more do we need to do here, and how can the World Bank, what do they need to do more to encourage fossil fuels as well as nuclear, and I assume all the above?
You're in EU shorts, okay.
Look,
yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is just have your stop. Like for me, my stop loss is above this high here. So I'm giving enough drawdown where it's like, cool, if we push above here, then I'm probably wrong. Then EU should probably keep heading up higher. Right, if you want to even safer stop, then it's going to be above that high there. I think this move here, we should be okay. We should be. Right, we should be. So we'll see how that goes.
What I would call almost a luxury belief that we have in the West. Like they are worried about pumping water. They are worried about heating their homes, running their hospitals, and we've seen that the intermittency doesn't work. even kind of in middle developed countries, maybe like South Africa, that seems to have rolling blackouts.
Okay.
So that's not a model. We want to have a model of strong base load and then bolting on the alternative production, as opposed to beginning with alternative production and then having this latency or intermittency that makes it impossible to industrialize.
In the final minute or two, let me just turn to financial intermediation. You know, there's a famous adage that capitalism without capital is just another ism. The institutions you see here are important intermediaries, both in the capital markets and in
capitalism without capital is just another ism.
What is your vision, especially for the U.S. in terms of financial regulation? What do you want the industry to look like? Obviously, the capital markets, the U.S. is a crown jewel of this economy. How should we encourage that not only here, but abroad?
Well, I think that I've been getting a lot of questions on private credit, and I think that private credit is an interesting addition to the U.S. mosaic.
Right, he's pushing up.
It is the depth and breadth of our capital and credit markets that powers the U.S. economy, and it's the innovation there. I think that private credit's a very new and interesting part, but it is happening outside of the regulated ecosystem.
Right.
And I always like to say, I'm not an economist, I'm an economic historian, and I think that is a distortion of the system, and it tells me that the post-2008 regulatory
So, again, we've slowed down.
On the regulated institutions.
Again, we've just taken out daily highs on the DXY for the dollar. So again, like I told you before the hourly candle closed, we're probably going to get a pullback. We've had that pullback. Now, we don't know how this hourly candle is going to close. There's not enough data or enough candles for me to tell you, you know, with a high degree of probability that we're going to head higher or head lower, right? But for now, what I can tell you is that hourly candle's low should remain intact. If we do drop again, don't fret, like feel confident in your EU shorts, right? Because I do think we either hold this 5-minute balance or we hold this 5-minute candle. We shouldn't really be pushing down here. And the fact that we had this doji candle print at 50% of this 5-minute balance was a good indication that we should head up higher. So again, I think you just got to sit tight in whatever trades you have, whether it's EU, gold, or whatever you're looking at. Like I said at the start of the session inside of Discord, most of the majors are pointing towards lower prices. So I'm going to stick with that. I'm also going to call the stream there because nothing else is really doing too much. I will update you guys as the day goes on.
Provides 70% of agricultural lending. 40%.
So Money Day, guys, thank you again for those of you that joined me and liked the stream, and for the new people on the stream as well. I'll see you guys inside the Discord, and we got one more stream tomorrow.
But I think it's Main Street's turn to show prosperity, and I think it was.
Let me check what's going on tomorrow. Tomorrow got initial jobless claims, and Friday
created this stagnation.
I mean, Friday, Australia's got a holiday, which is interesting. Core retail sales and retail sales. Okay, cool. But yeah, we should be fine for today. We've had at least one single decent trade, so we'll take that and we'll take it to tomorrow. Money Day.
With the Institute of International